This is that 66 twin reverb, and while it had seemingly okay Sprague atoms in place, the 280 microfarads dated from 1997. The 320s dated from 2021, but these are the newer ones that are only rated to 65 degrees Celsius. That's not too good. So these MODs are in here. These are rated to 105 degrees, and F&Ts are rated to 85 degrees Celsius. 65 is just kind of insulting for the price that they charge for these things. I don't have time to show it today. There are videos out there showing that inside these big blue caps are tiny little caps, no bigger than these. So it's a little bit of false marketing, in my opinion. Anyway, so we've got 70-70, 20-20-20, 500 volt, 350 volts, so 700 volt capacity here, 500 for every other stage. The 220Ks and the 1K and the 4.7K are all 2-watt metal film Vishays. All this is good, ready for the doghouse cover to be put back on. I'm going to show you the insides. So like on most 66 and later Fenders, all the connections to ground that have been made to the transformer mounting bolts have been changed to the 65 and earlier chassis connections that Fender did, and including the safety ground for the AC cable is not shown here. I've shown that in so many videos. You can see here in the rebuilt bias board, so I've got 7 new diodes, 1 in 4007s. You can use ultra fast if you want. It won't make any difference in a twin. I got a new 2-watt 470 ohm here, and a new 50 microfarad, actually 47 microfarad, 50 volt bias cap here. So all that's redone. And you can see here some 100 ohm half watt fusible metal films, 1% for the heater balance. And here's the old disconnected heater center tap. So what I do is I bend that over on itself like that, and I take some shrink wrap. A little bit tricky to do this with the camera between me and the work, but I haven't shown this in a while. So I'll slide that on, make sure that it's covered in there. And I want to have it not just covered, but I want it to have it go over that a little bit. So when I shrink it, it cannot possibly come undone unless someone were to slit it. So, all right, that's nice and secure. So I will just continue to tuck this to the old heater wires here. It is secure, it is out of the way, and this could all be put back if some person wanted originality over performance. And the reason that I prefer artificial center taps for heater supplies like that is if you do have a short somewhere in the heater supply in the amp, rather than having these wires burn up real fast and go into the power transformer, I've seen that happen, they'll just char in an instant. You'll lose one or both of these little 5-cent resistors, which is much better than changing out a power transformer. In some modern amps, they put fuses on the heater supply. The trouble with fusing a heater supply is that there's an onrush current through normal operation when you power the amp on, which usually will blow a heater fuse. Even when in steady operation, everything's still within specs. So it's really tricky to fuse a heater supply reliably and not have a bunch of false failures, which can ruin a gig. These won't fail under limited overcurrent condition, but you get enough of a current draw that you would have a damage to the power transformer, and these little things will just open up, and then the problem will go away most of the time. You can see here I've got new 3-watt 470 ohm Vishay wire wound resistors for the screens. I've got new 1.5K half-watt carbon film resistors for the grid stoppers. And I've confirmed that all the connections on the heaters are good, because a lot of times on old Fenders, there's a little bit of stress on these heater joints because of the weight of the wire and the tension. So it's not uncommon throughout the heater supply in an old Fender for one or more of these solder joints to be bad. They'll be looking okay because the wire is physically held in place in the joint, but it can move. So I always make sure that I don't need to reflow any. In this case, everything was fine, but it's very common to need to reflow a few of those heater solder joints. And of course, here I've added one more capacitor from the wiper of the bias pot to the shell, and that just gets rid of the last hum in the amp. It's just a little trick. Actually, Fender incorporated that same trick In the 70s amps, where they would have two capacitors in the bias supply, they used two 70 microfarads. I've got 47 and 22 here. Still does the same thing. You can pretty much do it with two 10s like Marshall did. But the series resistance from here to here decouples these stages. So this one is the one that's going to the main cap. So we've got filtering here, then we've got resistance, in this case about 5K, because we're about halfway up the pot, and then another one. And that really reduces hum and any ripple off of the one that called your raw bias. Well, actually, that's the raw bias, the one that's going to the bias leak resistors here, which then go to the grids of the output tubes. So for the cost of one more 22 microfarad cap, you can really reduce the hum in these things. I've shown that in some other videos, but it's nice to revisit some of my greatest hits, I guess. In the previous video on this amp, I showed some of the resistors that had drifted wildly out of tolerance, and those have all been changed out, including these two, which are just noisy. Sometimes when you heat up a soldering iron and the resistor just starts to bubble and let a whole bunch of stuff out when you're heating up a joint, yeah, I mean, technically, you can use a heat sink on the lead between the eyelet and the resistor, but a little bit of heat here usually won't hurt a resistor. But when they just start to sweat and ooze out every bit of moisture that they've collected over the past 100 years, I exaggerate, 60 years, that's another sign that a resistor may not be healthy, because other resistors in this amp did not do that trick when an eyelet was heated, but these two just started to go, which is kind of gross. Anyway, so all the out-of-spec resistors have been changed. I've got some slack on the leads of this 100 ohm here and the PI, because that often gets stressed and pulls out. The 4.7 microfarad versus the 22 or 25 I mentioned in the previous video here. And we did have a bad roach, the bad LDR specifically, previously, which is why the tremolo wasn't working. And it had the three 20 nanofarad, 22 nanofarad film caps here. I've gone to these little 1,000-volt ceramics, which are fantastic for this purpose, because they're never going to drift. They're never going to become microphonic, and they shrug off the voltage present. So back to 22, 10, 10, the vintage Fender spec. You'll get to hear that soon. And the rest of the preamp, cleaning pots, make sure all the jacks were tight to the chassis. That resistor was changed out because that was way out of spec. Changed out all the sprigs to these Vishés at the same time, just so when the amp is recapped, all the electrolytic capacitors here date from 2024 versus 1997. And other than that, all the components here are original. I did do my traditional thing where I disconnected certain components and had them up in the air and thoroughly cleaned the board. It took about 2.5 hours to get all the DC out of this board, but it is gone, daddy, gone. DC's gone away. So let's hear this thing real quick. Normal channel. Vibrato channel. Probably be better if I remembered to hook up the reverb tank. jacket today because it's cold in the house because we're trying to delay the inevitable heating bills. And first time wearing a jacket in a while, and I keep catching it on the bridge of that Strat. You heard some little fluctuations there. And last time you guys heard this amp, it had no low end on this channel. Now, all is completely well, and there was nothing wrong in the circuit. The problem was V2. It was a tongue saw. For whatever reason, a lot of the tongue saws, in my experience, and the Electro Harmonix 12AX7s and the Softex, which are all made in the same factory, they have weird cathodes. Sometimes you get really weird heater issues onto the cathode on those. And sometimes you get channel leakage where V1 and V2 are blended together, even though the volumes are off. And in this case, we were having internal leakage from V2A to V2B, which is the same signal pretty much, but inverted. And so that bleed was nuking the low end. What it has in it now in V1, V2, and V4 are the Electro Harmonix 7025s, which seem to be about the most reliable 12AX7s on the market these days, this week, this month. Hopefully it'll stay that way. I think what's happening is that Electro Harmonix tests the ones off the batch, the ones that match really good spec, they brand as 7025s and put on the silver print. And the ones which aren't that great but still, technically work, they put on the yellow print and sell to you as 12AX7s. So I could be wrong, but that has a one-to-one correlation with my experience of how they behave, sound, and last in the field. But anyway, this twin is sounding really nice, and all the mystery noises are gone, so it's time for me to turn attention to its baby brother, the 64 Deluxe Reverb. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.